Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to this discovery session. I hope you enjoy learning more about formative assessment strategies and what works in our online classrooms. The purpose of this presentation is to explore and discuss the use and value of formative assessment strategies in the online classroom. I appreciate your time and attention. Please take notes and mark down questions and ideas that come up throughout the presentation. I welcome an ongoing dialogue and will provide an opportunity for questions as well as to share feedback at the conclusion of this brief overview. So our time together is short and the topic is broad and far-reaching. We have several ambitious goals for this short presentation. First, we describe and define formative assessments. Next, we explain why we use formative assessments in the learning process. Third, we identify and describe a variety of formative assessment strategies and approaches. Next, we illustrate and summarize specific formative assessment strategies that can be used in the online classroom. For purposes of this presentation, we're going to be using a course on business development as our model. However, the shared examples can be easily adapted and applied in a wide variety of contexts. Finally, we close with an opportunity to share feedback and ask questions via a closing survey. I encourage you to complete the survey and share any questions you have. Feel free to also submit any ideas for engaging formative assessment activities. Thank you for your contributions, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. So, what are formative assessments? A metaphor created or shared by Robert Stake provides a useful reference and an opportunity to share some visual cues for formative assessments. According to Robert Stake, when the cook tastes the soup, that's formative. When the guests taste the soup, that's summative. This quotation provides helpful distinctions and comparisons as we think of the instructor and even sometimes the student as the cook, who is using a variety of formative assessments for tasting and testing how instruction is proceeding and how well students are understanding, with, of course, the goal of modifying the recipe, the instruction, as needed based on how well the soup, the instructional content, tastes. According to Chapman and King, formative assessments refers to ongoing daily assessment before, during, and after instruction to identify needs and provide continuous feedback. Formative assessment can serve as a rich sort of source of student data. There are many applications and uses for the data collected during the formative assessment process. These applications are ongoing and not confined to any particular form or format. Rather, it's important to recognize that formative assessment doesn't refer to any one specific type of assessment. Formative assessments are much more than common quizzes and tests. Rather, think of them as a process used by teachers and students during instruction that provides feedback to adjust ongoing teaching and learning. For purposes of this presentation, our focus is the use of formative assessments during the learning period and in the online classroom. We can think of these as providing an opportunity for both the instructor and the student to taste the instruction that is being delivered and check or self-assess for student understanding, gaps, and opportunities. So why use formative assessments? Well, they serve a variety of educational purposes, a few of which we just mentioned, and also from a variety of perspectives. Dylan William has written that the greatest impact on learning is the daily lived experience of students in classrooms, and that is determined much more by how teachers teach than by what they teach. Formative assessments are powerful opportunities to impact both the daily lived experience of students as well as how teachers teach. There are a wide variety of formative assessments that can be used during the learning period. According to Chapman and King, ongoing formative assessment during the learning experience keeps the learner on track and drives instructional planning. Formative assessments during the learning period can take many forms. Some of the most common are shared on this slide. Most, if not all of these, can be adapted with some flexible thinking and creativity for use in the online classroom. Okay, so let's start with observations. Observations are one of the most effective formative assessment tools. Chapman and King note that this powerful tool is too often overlooked and underestimated in today's data-driven world. This is no different in the online classroom. In the online class, this can be accomplished through holistic assessments of discussion board posts, for example. As for anecdotal assessment in the online classroom, an instructor might keep a log or spreadsheet tracking student work, engagement, and mastery of topics. To adapt know-it, show-it activities in the online classroom, instructors might ask students to show their understanding through a submission to a Google form, via email, and/or through a video post to a discussion thread. For response cards in the online classroom, instructors can use digital cards, and optional discussion forums where students anonymously respond yes, no to a knowledge-based question check. Further, In the online classroom, instructors can share low or no stakes quizzes using tools such as Google Forms, Quizlet, and Quizzes in order to assess student understanding in advance of high stakes assessments. Discussion boards and supplemental instruction resources can then be developed to address knowledge gaps. Next, we have High Five, A Bump in the Road, and Sketches from the Mind, as well as analyzing student notes as 4 additional examples. We're now going to move ahead and explore each of these in more detail on the following slides. Okay. So, what works, what might work well? Application number 1. The High Five assessment tool asks students to assign a ranking on a scale of 1 to 5. Students use the numbers to assess and rank their knowledge or understanding of a specific topic or skill. As an example, consider its use in teaching students about a business model canvas, a planning tool with 9 unique elements. After working through each element of the business model canvas, an instructor might provide students several minutes to reflect on their understanding of each element and how each element interacts with one another in a visual chart. After students spend a few minutes reflecting, the instructor can provide the following instructions. Name one of the elements in the business model canvas. Say 1, 2, 3, show me. Each student would then respond by raising an appropriate number of fingers as an indication of understanding. This can be adapted. Instruction can then be modified and adapted based on student responses. To adapt this for the online classroom, an instructor can share a Google survey with students asking for similar rankings. The instructor can then adapt instruction, share resources, and share additional instructional materials to meet student needs. Next, we have a Bump in the Road assessment tool. A Bump in the Road assessment tools provide students an opportunity to pause, reflect, and share in writing a problem or question related to a specific course concept or skill. After writing a problem or question at the top of a piece of paper, students then pass the paper to classmates. This can be an individual student or a group of students. The recipient then provides, again in writing, their recommendations to the problem. As an example, when teaching a concept of a business model, after reviewing readings and exploring the meaning of the phrase, the instructor might ask students to spend a few minutes thinking about their understanding. Students then take out note cards or a sheet of paper and write down a problem or question related to the business model concept at the top of their sheet of paper. After doing so, they then pass it to another student. When in receipt of the new paper or note card, students then review the problem and add their suggestions or answers. This continues for several rounds. In the online classroom, a discussion forum can be used for the same purpose and in a similar manner. Students might be grouped into pairs, teams, or participate as a class. In a dedicated discussion forum, students can post questions and peers can then be required to respond to 1 or more questions throughout the course of a week or module. Our next application is our assessment tool is analyzing student notes. Analyzing student notes as a formative assessment tool is another opportunity to gain valuable information about student learning. Chapman and King write that when an instructor reads a student's recorded notes, the written words reflect the student's thinking and provide an in-depth view of the learner's interpretation of the information. In effect, the notes serve as stored information that help make the student learning visible for assessment. There are a variety of ways that an instructor can utilize this assessment tool in order to better support student growth. Chapman and King suggest highlighting important terms or key ideas, tabbing important or confusing sections of text, and marking, for example, with an asterisk, star, check mark, or some other marking, important and/or keywords. I have a linked document that I'll share at the end of the presentation with some additional steps that you could use in your online classrooms. In the online classroom, an instructor might first encourage students to take notes. As a non-graded assessment, an instructor can then ask students to submit their individual notes, either via email and/or classroom guidebooks. The instructor can then provide some feedback based on observations of the student submissions. As an alternative, students can post their notes in an online forum for peer review, discussion, and analysis. Okay. So our next assessment tool is called Sketches from the Mind, and this is another powerful formative assessment tool for use during the learning process. With this tool, students make simple miniature drawings or sketches of important nouns from a particular unit or topic of study. These simple drawings provide students a specific mental picture or symbol to locate, remember information, and assess the accuracy of placement. Again, I'll share a link that you can access at the end of the presentation with some more detailed instructions on how to use this in your own classrooms. But basically, for the online student, an instructor can create a discussion forum where students can share their sketches. The instructor might then post an initial list of nouns and phrases in the forum, or the instructor might permit students to share a sketch in lieu of a text-based response on the discussion board. Students can review and comment on the shared sketches. In a predominantly text-based learning environment, this exercise will likely feel both uncomfortable, at least at first, and challenging to students. Students will also likely find the exercise fun and original. Providing alternative ways of participating in online discussions is often an effective means of incorporating both differentiation and options for students with different backgrounds, skill sets, and learning preferences. In summary, formative assessments during the learning process provide ongoing checks for both understanding and misunderstanding for all students. These checks can be administered and accomplished in a wide variety of creative, fun, and engaging ways. The online classroom is no exception. As we wrap up, it's important to remember that research supports the position that formative classroom assessment is one of the most powerful tools a classroom teacher might use in daily instruction. It's also important for instructors, including online instructors, to make the most of this powerful tool during the learning process. I hope you enjoyed a brief overview of sample tools for formative assessments during the learning process, as well as a deeper dive into specific applications for a business development course. As a closing activity, I encourage everyone to take out a piece of paper or an index card. Please write down some ideas as to how you might incorporate formative assessments in your own online classroom. Next, please share any questions and feedback that you might have on the specific tool shared in the presentation or on formative assessment more generally. A link to a closing survey is shared on this slide, and I hope you will share your ideas. If a handful of participants do submit a response, I'll combine all feedback and share with anyone interested. You can include your email, of course optional, on the survey link. Thank you for your time and attention, everyone. I hope you have a great day and a fantastic rest of the session. And finally, a list of references is shared for anyone who would like to learn more about formative assessments and their use in the learning process. Once again, thank you for your time and your attention. I wish you and your students, face-to-face or online, the very best as you implement formative assessments during the learning process. One more page of references to share. And again, thank you all very much. Have a great session. Have a great conference.